Hello again. After a little break, we're back with the show, The Paradigm Shift. I'm Nick Ziggets, your host, and we will be talking about something that is a little different than we used to cover. We usually cover business, real estate, different topics regarding that. But today in the studio with me are two special guests, and we're going to cover a topic that most of you will probably like and enjoy and have your opinion about it. Today in the studio with me, Berg and Kirk Bauer, both with the Teen Pregnancy Resource Institutions. One is Foothill Pregnancy Resource Center from Monrovia, and the other one is the Alternate Avenues Women's Resource Center from Montclair. Mm-hmm. That's where Kirk is from. So we'll be talking about teen pregnancy. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. So we can just jump straight into it. Instead of me going through the boring thing of introducing yourself, talking about you and so on, why don't you just tell our audience, our viewers, about yourself and what you do?
Well, Kirk and I have a similar background and career path, if you will, in that we both happen to be executive directors. As you mentioned, we have differing titles or names of our centers, certainly, but they are, in the old days, pregnancy centers have been around since about the late 1960s, and they used to be solely usually referred to as crisis pregnancy centers, and now we take on a host of different names. In our case, we are, and I am the executive director of Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center, located right on Buena Vista, right at where the cities of Monrovia and Duarte kind of converge upon one another. That center has only been there about 8 years.
Okay.
So we are a baby among pregnancy centers, and certainly teen pregnancy is something that, while it's affecting peoples globally and nationally, no city is devoid of the issues of teen pregnancy and related issues.
Absolutely.
And a pregnancy resource center, using the name of mine, Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center, one of the things that we do confidentially and freely and in earnest hopes of building relationship with each one of the gals and the guys that we serve, includes free pregnancy testing, so that indeed a teen or any other eligible client may come into our center and indeed learn if she is pregnant.
Okay. Lori, I'm looking forward to the nitty-gritty and getting into the detail, and we have
I'll enjoy
discussed
sharing.
Yes, there's so many, so much things to share, and the main thing that I want to bring up is whatever the practice is, whatever the stats are, and whatever we are doing today in the society and our communities, how can it be done better? Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm curious about here. Kirk, please.
Yeah, our clinic, Alternate Avenues, is in Montclair. I'm the executive director there too. We've been in that location for about a little over 3 years. It's been a kind of an intentional effort for us to kind of move into an area where we had high schools nearby, and other medical facilities and stuff around us. Like Lori said, this movement has been around for a long time, but the main change here lately is that a lot of us are really starting to put some emphasis on medical care, and both Lori's clinic and ours is our licensed medical clinics in the state of California, which is not that easy to do. Some other states,
Indeed.
It's find a doctor, have him agree to hang the shingle above the door, and you're going. But in the state of California, it's much more difficult. So we take great pride in the fact that we've gone through that effort, that we can stand up to the challenges of an audit from the state of California and that type of thing, and we know we've got top-notch facilities, and that's important. I mean, these teenagers have been given a lot of information over the years about Planned Parenthood and family planning, those types of organizations, and they've really made themselves as the go-to people for any question related to that. So I think it's incumbent upon us to be as professional as they are, to have nurses on staff, to have a doctor that's available, or in our case, we have a doctor that actually volunteers, and so that they know they're getting top-notch medical advice. It's not just a group of people that got together one weekend and decided that they would do this, and they read it on the internet, and that's what they're using. We have trained medical staff that are doing it.
And that is so cool, because when I heard about it first was from Lori, when I met Lori, and there were, at the same time, there were things happening in my life. My daughter is going to Duarte High School, and she's coming back with the experiences that they have at schools, and it suddenly popped up that it's happening all over the place, and that teen pregnancy is just a fact of life, and it's only where the numbers fit there and how much attention does it deserve. And knowing and being affected like that, and being a youth at some point myself, it has brought my attention, talking to Lori, that it is so great to have actually institutions other than your friends and your parents and your relatives steering people in whatever direction in the confusing world they live in, that there is some organized effort to help them both pre and after, and the choices and so on. So let's get into some of those things. I know that there is a tremendous amount of influence. So in your opinion, we'll take Lori first as a lady, on influence, what do you put most weight on? Parents and relatives, society, movies, school?
Wow. These are quite the days that we're rearing our kids, whether or not we have physical kids of our own. I know I teach in several facilities, so I consider myself an adult in a responsible position of being around young people of all ages a lot of the time, not just in the work that I do as executive director of the Pregnancy Center. And I want to dovetail on something that Kurt pointed out, because when we say words like medical clinic, medical center, in the pregnancy care center movement, if I can use that phrase, if you will, being a medical clinic, and this is actually a wonderful thing, because as Kirk mentioned, there's a credibility that the state of California is actually our overseer being a medical clinic, but what that looks like to a couple who is dating. For that matter, they could be a married couple, from a married couple in their teens on through their conceiving years. They come into a clinic. Everything is supervised by medical personnel if you are a medical clinic. So in our case, Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center, the client comes in and she is not conducting her own pregnancy test. Everything is overseen by by my RN in the case. And then what also makes us a medical clinic in the pregnancy center way of doing and looking at things is we have ultrasound equipment, which are amazing life-showing and life-changing devices. But these too are run by medical personnel, by trained, licensed sonographers, and a doctor signs off to everything. And in Kirk's case, where he's got a doctor on the premises, then wow, that's wonderful, because when we, as we will in this show, even this evening, when we're talking about things like sexually transmitted disease, when you have a doctor on your premises, and this is for our future where we would like to go ultimately, in conjunction with our talking about things like abstinence, what makes a safe team around you, and your question, Nick, about kind of not only just what is our focus, but where do we see these children of all ages? It could even be an older teen or a young adult that maybe just has not been exposed to a fully intact home. Social media, while that is wonderful for the information superhighway and all of that neat stuff, when you think of that phrase, villages are raising your children. Well, look at the villages that are raising. We've got tweets and blogs and Facebooks and LinkedIn and now everything else. And then from our phone, where we were just speaking a moment ago about, kids are exposed as soon as they can have a cell phone, which for some parents, their kids are having a cell phone to be in touch with mom and dad when needed as early as 8, 9, 10 years old. Well, then they can be exposed to all things sexual, not just pornography, though that is certainly rampant, but they can be exposed to all information sources, movies, television. And if parents aren't talking to their kids, then kids are going to talk to other kids. So the sphere of influence, wherever they're, as parents are always getting told or getting advised, know your kids, know the circles that they are swimming in. Yeah. Because those kids, the parents of those kids, what movies those kids go to, what are their television viewing habits, that's what's rearing your child. And most of our, and Kirk may say similar things are different, but most of our clients who come in and we're testing them for pregnancy, and we'll sit down and we use team building a lot, because from the get-go, we want these clients, male and female, to now see us as part of their team. If they're pregnant, if it's a negative test, she's not pregnant, but you know what? We still want to be on her team and talk to her about her future, hopefully healthy choices. So we use the expression a lot around our place. We want to be on your team. So we'll say, who else is on your team? Mom, dad? Are they a part of your team? Do you have an aunt and uncle that are go-to people? 9.99999 times out of 10 is, I don't have anyone on my team. Right. There isn't anyone who's talking to me about things sexual. Sex isn't just the act of intercourse. Sex is anything sexual.
Right. And we'll talk about most of those influences. I know out of my personal experience that most of the things, not just related to sex, kids learn from other kids, and they want to pick up from other kids. As a parent, I can talk all day long, and they'll just go like, da, 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 and then come back home and say the same thing that they learned from their friends. Same thing that I tried to teach them. So, Kirk, what's your stand on this?
Well, a lot of what Lori said I absolutely agree with, but I'll go a little bit more specific to your question. We had a young mom that we took in, and I remember I had a little situation where I was just trying to sit down on YouTube with this little 3-year-old girl and look up some Dora the Explorer cartoons and clips and stuff like that. And as I saw them build up on the right side of the screen, I could look at those clips and I could see that's not Dora the Explorer. That's not a clip.
Wow.
That's pornography. So here I am just very innocently going to sit down and try to watch some clips with a little 3-year-old girl, and had I not taken the care to notice what was in there or where that website was and stuff like that, I would have opened pornography in front of this little 3-year-old girl. So I think that with the technology...
What service was that on?
Huh?
Do you remember what service was used?
I was on YouTube.
Okay.
When I was just looking, I was just trying to entertain her.
Yeah,
I was just trying to entertain her because that was her favorite cartoon. And but I think that's happening with all of these kids, both on the internet, on their phones and stuff like that. There is such an access to sexually related material, and without the check and balance of a parent and a morality that helps them with that, somebody to bounce that off of,
absolutely,
they are exposed way too early to be able to know what to do with that. And so my opinion is they role play. I mean, it's like they saw that on there. The girl does this to the guy. Well, let's try that. Let's see what happens. Well, what happens is they end up with a positive pregnancy test. Okay, so it's just, to me, it's a society we live in, the exposure, and just parents a lot of times just aren't there.
That's interesting. I thought of leaving that for later on, but it clicks in to what you just said. We talked about it earlier that in Europe, most of the sexual content on TV is open source. Mm-hmm. It's on TV, not on YouTube, but on TV channels that are unlocked. And yet, Europe has a much lower teen pregnancy rate than we do. So is it, it's obviously balanced back by education and everything else that goes along to counter that portion. And as they say, the forbidden fruit is the sweetest fruit and stuff like that. And when you keep it away, people try to get to the information. if it's accessible yet controlled and talked about, it could be turned the other way as a positive thing. So you guys actually do something like that within your reach. You provide,
we are both
yes.
safe places, because safe place is not just a safe physical shelter, a place of being to be in. It's a safe place to talk. And we do so many services and resources and services to all of our clients, male and female, of all ages, certainly not just the teens. And I know we'll go there even during the course of the show. But we really want to create that atmosphere, because if we're not going to be able to talk through it, then really their visit to our place, they're not going to believe we are a part of their team. And by going there and talking about these things, because we're not avoiding it, because we're not beating around the bush, we're not coming up with fancy metaphors by which we don't really get anything said. I have a group that meets every Friday afternoon, for instance. It's called Friday with Friends. And it's billed as a safe place for teen girls ages 13 to 17. And what do we do? That's a I'm stating a mouthful by calling it a safe place. It's such a safe place that these girls can come in and sit and eat their snacks, and we do a check-in, the high and low of their week, gets to break the ice a little bit with each other. We get a little window in to see how everyone's week was, and then the girls can just share whatever. If they've had a breakup with a beau, if they've flunked a test, if they're super tired because of something that happened last night, or mad at their parents, or concerned for something at home. And certainly the topic of sex and what is sexual. We've just in the last couple of weeks been writing a dictionary called Love Language Dictionary, where I simply just put the girls to the question to the girls like this: what does it mean when you hold a guy's hand? And they kind of looked at me like, what do you mean? What does it mean when I'm holding the guy's hand? I said, no. If you offer your hand, or if he takes your hand, have you guys had a discussion about what that means now? Oh, no, we haven't. So what does it mean then when he bends over and kisses you on the lips? If you're not sure what that means, and you haven't asked him what does that mean in your love language dictionary, well, of course then a class like this will then graduate, and now we're talking about things sexual, or we're talking that sexual isn't just sex. Sexual is the things leading up to sex. Teens want to talk about this, and even preteens. Here again, we were talking earlier about middle school kids are learning from their friends, whether or not they're learning or they're just repeating information that their same age friends. So they may not be learning anything, but they're repeating that information. And if you prove to them, but just by having a safe place, that hey, no question is out of balance here. We are here to answer questions.
When you say that, I would recommend that type of counseling to every teen, and that after we talked a little bit to boy or girl, because they're both exposed to it. Within the time that I did some research, I met a girl that was telling me that when a boy that she didn't feel strong about kissed her on the lips unwillingly, she didn't know how to respond, because he thought there was mixed things, that she is okay with that. And she didn't know how to say no, because she was caught by surprise. And with that action of not pushing him away or reacting because of the confusion at that moment, it enforced his thought that she's okay with it.
Right, of course.
So who is in the wrong there? And how do we deal with that? But it seems to happen quite a bit, and that particular example was something that I was wondering myself. How do you, it's just a total misunderstanding. And how do you solve a misunderstanding, or how do you prevent it from happening?
Oh, that's, misunderstanding of communication. I mean, I've been married for 35 years. I still have those. But
learning.
so he'll get it eventually. But I still think you see on TV. I mean, this girl sees many shows where the woman's just she's always receptive. Mm-hmm. Okay, she's receptive to the guy's advances, and this is just a normal thing. So to her, she's like, well, maybe something's wrong with me because I wasn't really all that keen on that. Okay, and so you don't know. I mean, where they've been and what they've seen. The guy. He's trying whatever he can get away with. I mean, that's the bottom line. And I was always counseled many years ago, don't ever be a counselor. But because I am just black and white. I mean, a lot of times the guys, I can say things to a young man in our clinic way differently than I would ever even think about it. And I don't counsel young women, but I wouldn't say them the same to a young lady sitting in the clinic. And I didn't raise my boys and my daughter with the same approach on things. I raised my daughter with entirely different tools to use in that situation. Number one, they'd have to come in and face me, if a guy did something wrong. But that's what they've been brought up with. Is that I have a hard time watching TV sometimes now, with seeing what's on TV. The stuff that used to be an R-rated movie years ago is now on your television set, and you just sit there and you wonder, with the amount of pornography and all that kind of stuff, if that was thrown at me way back then, where would I be today? I mean, could I have survived and maintained a pure lifestyle if that had been thrown at me time after time after time? And now all the shows on TV are glamorizing teen pregnancy and making it fun and entertaining and surprise us. And I mean, it's just a different time. And when I was in high school, the girls disappeared when they got pregnant. Now you can go to most schools, and I'm not saying it's wrong or right, but most schools a lot of schools will have programs for pregnant teens, and I think that's a good thing. A good thing, because I think they shouldn't be ostracized, but at the same time, we've changed a lot, in the 30 or 40 years.
And if I can add too, because this is very important, while our clients who are being tested for pregnancy certainly are women at the pregnancy centers, we are there in whatever way as well we can come around these guys. We're talking, a main focal point about your program today is teen pregnancy, and yet if we can flash forward a 40-year-old who is coming in for a free and confidential pregnancy test, we will sit down and have, in many ways, the same conversation with a 40-year-old testing for pregnancy. Who is on your team? Do you have a strong group of women around you? And it could be that no one got to her as a teen or as a middle school preteen, and she's just living and carrying on and carrying out and to use the phrase, acting out on some of her same choices, when here again, no one spoke into her life as a teen. But so while most of our clients that we serve are women, we do also try to come around the guys. And to that end, even though the group that my Friday with Friends group of gals are 13 to 17-year-old girls, I also want to be very careful that we're not demonizing the young guys, because these are young women getting out there in the dating world. And so one thing that I'm always encouraging them, and for instance in this little love language exercise that I just mentioned a moment ago, that the young guy that they're out on the date with, it's going to serve him, and he's probably inwardly, if not outwardly, going to go, this is awesome. That a girl wants to talk about taking this next step of holding a hand, or if I kiss her, if we've got that information on the table, then that may change my mind. Do I want to take that step? Do I want to go there? I really believe that the guys, and I know this sounds almost so overused, but there are so many young men who are not fathered these days. Yeah. They don't have mentors. And these guys have got to be out there looking for answers as well. And those guys are also being raised by peer pressure and social media and everything that's about. So they're looking for the helps as well.
That's why I mentioned it. It's actually in my opinion, totally irrelevant which sex it is, because I mean, don't judge me by it, but I have a different opinion how I would raise a boy and different of a girl. Why can't it be the same way? But you know, for a boy, you want the masculine thing out, and for the girl, it's daddy's baby. So, so you know, if it exists with me, it's just all over the place. But you know what? It's interesting that I'll just refer to some statistics because of the media influence on this topic. We're looking. I know from before, I would say 1976 is the first time I heard some vulgar words in songs come up. About 1976, I remember there was something on TV that was like shocking. And it evolved to today. My son likes to listen to rap. And I have a difficult time listening to it because of the content that's in there. And I'm thinking like, wait, this is playing in clubs, and it's being sung by both male and female in the clubs, and what is the message? However, yet on the stats, we have between 1991 and 2009 that there was 75 teen pregnancies out of 1,000 teens, and today around 30. So it has been a drop of half, even though the influence of media and movies have raised dramatically.
And yet those are teen pregnancies that have carried to term.
Yes, that is a good note, because actually it's about double when you include all the miscarriages and abortions.
Right.
Yep.
So, but because the balance is twice across the board, we can use any number, it dropped 50%. So we are doing good as far as educating, because the influence of the society, media, movies, and music has drastically increased.
I would argue
All right.
that we are not doing so well, and we are educating accessibility to all things sexual, and at the same time educating accessibility towards the quick fix. We are a real quick fix society, including pregnancy, and I would argue or throw in my opinion, if nothing more, because I don't have the factual things to back that up with me this evening, but I would argue from my own opinion standpoint that number is far too low as far as the women who would terminate their pregnancies in abortion. The easy access being that between the morning after pill, RU486, which is just a new development in, the last 3-4 years. And that is basically, it's going to sound very general, but that's a do-it-yourself abort-at-home pill. The emotional repercussions are very, very dangerous because of then the forever memory that you had this abortion in your own home. So the convenience factor is somewhat outweighed by that, but then kind of the growing accessibility to abortion, that there is the numbers that we typically read in our center is much, much higher than that. That teen pregnancy is just still something that is not necessarily that it's on the rise or that it's dipped, but it just is. But the gals have so many quick fix options made available to them to get immediately relief, and parents do a lot of, obviously parents are, when a teen pregnancy, and for that matter, we use the phrase unplanned pregnancies. The word crisis got thrown out, and that's a good choice of our pregnancy care centers a number of years ago, because crisis just kind of has that stigma attached to it. But so we use typically a phrase unplanned pregnancy. And whenever an unplanned pregnancy happens to any educated base, any race, any economical base, it's unplanned. And all of a sudden that couple, that individual, that set of parents with their teen daughter, they are thrust into a gray area. It is not always the teen girl and or the teen girl with her boyfriend, her partner. It many times may be the set of parents of the teen that everyone knows about abortion. Let's go to. They come to a place like ours. We not only inform them and serve them about what all of their options may be, but even in many cases, we see this rather frequently at the center. Kirk can speak to if he sees that, where a couple will even come in, a teen or a set of parents bringing their pregnant teen daughter. They don't want to ask any questions at the abortion clinic because they just want to go there and have this taken care of, but at the same time they know that we're a safe place and they can come and talk. What's really going to happen there? So I would argue that that number is staying the same, if not on the rise, because everything is so accessible to the kids sexually, but then the take care of the problem is just as accessible.
I didn't find anything that's great to hear, bad knowledge, but at the same time, you know, the effects of anything like that, effects of the normal pregnancy or abortion or getting a child or doing something like that at home. You got physical, you got emotional, you got psychological effects. What are the findings that you have on all those fields?
Well, you know, in going back with what Lori said on the statistics, California is a hard state from statistics standpoint because there's no real reporting on abortions and stuff like that. So a lot of what we do here is guesswork because the state doesn't do that. So we don't really know. So we do go a lot by just what happens in our clinics. But when you take things like a third of all teenagers don't use any protection at all, okay, when they have sex. So a third of the time, if they do, it's probably condoms, because that's what they've been taught in school. And I know there's a lot of people who argue with me about this, but the failure rate is about 15% is a good average number. So then we take that, we factor in that if that doesn't work, then they can be down to the abortion clinic for the morning after pill. If they're too late for that, they can have the RU486 or surgical abortion. So there's step after step after step to make sure that that pregnancy never shows up as a baby on the statistics. So I think there's a lot going on towards that. And I think the government is trying to convince us all that they're doing a great job with this, with the numbers. But I know even if you take the raw data, the number on teen pregnancy is actually starting to go back up again. And that's got everybody kind of alarmed, because if it's gone so well, what would all of a sudden stop that progress and then all of a sudden start changing it? Our society is surely not getting any better. We're not doing, I don't think the society is doing a better job in this. So I think when these kids have that type of stuff thrown at them constantly, it's bound to lead to decisions and choices and consequences of a culture that's just been put in their head. Don't worry, just do it. Everybody else is doing it. Your friends are doing it. Just have at it. And if that doesn't work, there's a backup plan. And we're just going to pretend that there's no consequence. And it's just, I mean, I remember being a teenager. I raised kids. You know, you're going to tell a teenage girl, here's this pill. You've got to remember to take it exactly the right time, exactly the same time during the day. And you're going to expect a 14 or 15-year-old girl to be able to follow that? The likelihood of them making a mistake and then end up pregnant is very high. And when we're talking about teen pregnancy, a lot of this, we're not even talking about STDs. I mean, pregnancy is only one thing that can happen. Their lives can be affected, destroyed, or taken in many other ways as a result of an STD. So I don't know how these kids live. It's like they live in a minefield. Yeah. And they've been given all of these things that can harm them and very little guidance. And we just kind of leave them out there on their own.
Yeah. It's so many conflicting messages. Here again, using the model of pregnancy centers, here again that we got our origin back in the late 1960s. We do not refer guys and gals to any form of contraception. What we teach or what we practice through usually licensed LPNs is we teach the art of natural family planning, which if a woman's cycle is regular, that is literally the only foolproof contraceptive, foolproof birth control on the planet, and it's natural design. It takes a heck of a lot of discipline for both partners, but we do not adhere. We don't teach and preach, if you will, contraceptives, because if you think the conflict of that message, and Kirk's example was a great one. Here's you're giving contraceptive, and you're teaching your 14-year-old daughter or a neighbor or a niece, how to use birth control. But then you're also saying, but honey, we want you to be empowered, and we want you to think preciously. We want you to think well of yourself and others, that you are not using your body, nor are you using anyone else's body. We want you to think well of yourself. So we'd really prefer you not choose to be sexually active, but just in case, we're going to give you this birth control. Because believe me, I know I, as an executive director, there are some times where I've had conversations with my nurse. Oh, I just wished we gave out birth control. I mean, I might say this in a heated moment because the desperation of a woman who discovers that she is 14 weeks along in her pregnancy.
Yeah.
And now she feels like she must make the decision. I'm going to have this, I'm going to carry this child to term and either make an adoption plan for this child, or whoa, is my life changed? I'm a parent now and I'm going to carry this baby, or I have to make the choice of having an abortion. And where I sit and personally agonize over that is that decision is usually not made, though our numbers of abortion incidents is just skyrocketing. How many thousands per month is it just in this state alone? And yet the agonizing decision that a woman must make when she is in that place of, I carry this child or I have this abortion. Oh, at least if she were on birth control, she wouldn't be carrying this 14-week-old fetus. And yet, because of the model of who we are, we believe that life begins at conception. But also, we're preaching the safest sex, which is wait until you're in fully committed married sex. That truly is safe sex. So if we were to adhere to contraception methods, then what about the talk that I've just been sharing with my teenage girls about safe sex? But here you go, here's some birth control anyway. And the conflicting message of the safe sex, that is a phrase because everyone knows it. Safe sex is really the waiting to have sex kind. That is the only safe sex. And yet, everything's out there. And so our teaching about safe sex versus what may happen even with safe sex, as Kirk mentioned, STDs, we're kind of living in our grandmother's head if we're saying, what's the worst thing that could happen to your son and daughter? Oh, to have a baby outside of marriage. That would be the worst thing. It would end their career. They'd have to drop out of school. We're not even thinking about the diseases of STDs. We're still stuck in our grandmothers. Oh, if she gets pregnant, that's awful. But what if she gets cancer due to HPV, which is a sexually transmitted disease? Is the cancer okay? She's not pregnant, but she's got cancer. No. We really have to get back to that. In the pregnancy center realm, we use this phrase a lot, sanctity of life. Sanctity of life isn't just a pro-abortion, anti-abortion thing. How we use the phrase sanctity of life at Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center, it's you individually seeing and getting that your life is so precious, and we share that with every client. Your life is so precious before you think about creating another life. Treat yourself so preciously that you're not allowing yourself to be used, nor are you abusing another. That's where sanctity of life starts.
I can only agree with you on that. However, let's kind of step it a notch and create a discussion rather than, I will not allow you to talk anymore individually, but together.
Okay.
Great.
The fact, there was a movie that just came out on the 28th on Life Channel. It was based on the pregnancy. It's called, on the book called The Pregnancy Project. A girl by the name of Gabby Rodriguez from the city of Topanesh, Washington, started a book. She actually started a project. There was a lot of things happening in her school, like I mentioned in our schools locally here, and there was a lot of decisions to be made, and there was a lot of social impact, family, friends, teachers, and so on. So to put it all on a challenge, she pretended that she's pregnant for 8 months.
Interesting.
And there was only a few people that knew about it, and she went through the whole ordeal. The movie itself just inspired me for the general topic. What are the impacts, social, society? Let's flip the coin and say, okay, we'll go through the pregnancy and we will have the baby. What are the impacts for that teen in today's society? What can we expect? What do you think that teen can really expect?
Well, I think we've got a lot of
Honest, yeah.
yeah, a lot of old notions. Okay, for example, one of them is that there's this notion that just because she's a teen and she's pregnant, that by the fact that she's a pregnant teen, she's now destined to poverty. That statistic's been kind of disproven, and they've found out that when they really investigated these young ladies, the women that were already doing poorly in school and were already not thriving, if they got pregnant, their situation stayed the same. They did not thrive, but they were really in that environment. If you take a young lady and you teach them that you're pregnant, but this isn't the end of the road and this can be overcome, if we just dig in, there's resources. You've got a whole bunch. If there's nobody else in your life that's willing to help, everybody at our clinics is ready to help, to find resources. Then we're going to jump in and we're going to do this together. You give her that, and then she can do it. And she's not going to be the high school dropout.
But here's the debate part.
Okay.
So I'll cut
Go
you
ahead.
off because we
Yeah.
can debate
Right,
now.
let's
Right.
debate.
Right. Otherwise, you talk, and we.
Yep.
So wouldn't you say then the main factor of her going through it is the support of the family,
That has
mom
a lot.
and dad?
Sure, has a
So
lot to
they
do.
have to come to your center to be educated because they are the first barrier to her accepting it as an option, accepting going through with the pregnancy as an option.
Well, I'd say that probably the boyfriend's the first barrier.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to say, Nick is giving us more work to do,
Yeah.
which is great. We just, Kirk just shared at our recent gala event, and I brought Kirk in to speak because he's a gentleman running a pregnancy resource center, but he had really piqued my interest when he talked to me about a couple of groups at his local church that were coming around some of these fathers, some of these young guys who were coming to the pregnancy clinic to, test and see if their girlfriends are pregnant or not. And I heard that in my ears just bing, bing, bing immediately, because I'm thinking, wait a minute, pregnancy centers, yeah, we do the free and confidential resources, we're building the relationships, and we are empowering, and we are parenting classes and the teen support and offering more and more services all of the time for the gals. But wait a minute. The other half, the other side of this pregnancy is the father. Whoa, we now have to start speaking into these guys. We have just started a brand new practice at Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center whereby we're giving the guys, when they come in, and poor guys, for a long time they're stuck out in the lobby because the gal is getting the RN administered pregnancy test, right? And then possibly the ultrasound before the guy can even come into the counseling room with her. We're giving him a card that says, are you feeling overwhelmed? Everyone could use a mentor. Would you like another guy to talk to? We're just starting this program called Guys to Guys, where we can set you up with a one-on-one guy to have lunch with, to just meet and have a Starbucks with. So starting to come around the guy, because it almost goes back to that kissing question, right? And the whole love language thing. He may be so totally overwhelmed, he's just thinking the only way out of this is abortion or that abortion pill thing, when really that's not even in his heart what he'd like to do, but he's scared to death and he doesn't have anyone to go home to.
Problem.
So so it's coming, it's coming around them.
Well, getting back to the parents and stuff again, I mean, I probably 1,000 times we've heard this. You know, I'm pregnant. If my parents find out, they're going to kill me.
Yeah.
Okay, all the time. All right, and you have to sit. Okay, your parents aren't going to kill you. Okay, I mean, or whatever. But they're going to be disappointed. They might get angry, and it's just role playing a little bit with this young lady.
We're that safe place to talk.
Yeah. So okay, what's going to happen? And I think you've done this too, and I know we have. It's like if you just flat don't want to be the person to tell them, bring your parents here, and we'll set it up with the nurse and we'll arrange this. But those parents, I mean, it doesn't take a parent very long. I remember one time we were open late and I was there and there was a dad, a mom, and a 15-year-old girl sitting in the waiting room, and there was no mentors there. I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to be the one. I said, oh man, only because this guy was big. Okay, shaved head, and it's like, oh, I don't want to be the one to have to carry this conversation. I'll let the women do it. No, I didn't. But I really didn't want to have this conversation with this guy. I mean, and big burly guy, and they were there because their answer to the problem was they were going to take their 15-year-old girl to the clinic around the corner and have an abortion, and that would solve it all. Well, but you go through this process of how did we get here? What's our consequences? What's the resources available? How can we help you guys in this situation? And you get mom and dad involved in the process. Well, that big burly guy, when he left our clinic after he had watched his daughter go through the pregnancy test, and you mentioned it earlier, your little girl, that was his little girl that was hurting, okay? And he knew it at that particular point in time, so his heart got soft. And next thing you know, all of a sudden there's resources given to them and what can help their daughter. The fact that their daughter doesn't have to drop out of high school. And all of a sudden, but you take them back in that room and you show them an ultrasound, well, that big old burly guy came out crying after he saw his grandchild on that screen. And so you're right, it is a lot to do with the parents. But even if the parents come to this kicking and screaming, or even if they abandon the girl, that doesn't mean that she can't do it. As long as she's got the resources behind her.
We use the word holistic a lot, just kind of as a buzzword around the center, that we really are, there's a common buzz phrase, pro-life, and I like to use the example that if a church or an individual or any organization truly wants to be pro-life just isn't about making the choice to save a baby that's still in utero and that baby's outcome is still, in the ballast. Pro-life is really wrapping around lives that need you, whether that's a teen who's trying to do this pregnancy thing and the home is kind of shatter-tattered, or one of my favorite things to do is quite often Kirk and I are asked to go share in churches, for instance, in respect to our centers. And I love to beat on the pulpit a little bit and say, truly what pro-life is, there's a family in this church that probably could use a couple of other families walking through. Maybe they're walking through a pregnancy right now that they weren't planning on. We have kind of the antithesis story of the father. We have we worked with a father once who had, to use the word, coerced his daughter into an abortion. And abortion affects, there's a ripple effect. Abortion not just affects the mother and the baby, of course, that she was carrying, but it affects so many friends and relatives. And this was a case where a father had said, nope, honey, we're doing this. And afterwards, his spirit was more broken than hers, but then he watched her going away an hour a day at a time. And they came to the Center for Healing. Post-abortion healing is one huge component of our services that we do. Your point about the girls and the financial, and will she continue school, and if she has this baby, what is the likelihood of her success? There's a powerful group that's present on a lot of college campuses, and I want to give them a hoo-hoo, because a lot of times feminists are kind of feminists equals abortion, and actually the abortion movement or whatever kind of stole feminism. There is a very strong contingency They're called Feminists for Life, and they have presence on a lot of college campuses. And the reason that they are there is, you talk about empowering young women. These gals will make a point to go to rallies and to wrap around girls and encouraging her, no, you don't have to drop out of college.
But see,
to continue.
There is the groups that stand purely for one thing, and they will not see any other way than that.
That's correct.
And the other thing without seeing, and what I'm learning here, and I really love for us having this show, because I feel smarter, and I hope the audience will feel smarter after this, is that there is all these different social groups, all these different people out there
There's
with
a lot of
different
help.
lives
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of different
help.
scenarios, that you have to look at the issue for each individual alone. But look into it. So I am totally in for your groups and similar ones, because they give the choice when the light goes up, alert, 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 we have a problem, instead of reacting to it, settling down and taking the issue just like you are, and seeing for that individual what are the right options, and then
Making informed
intelligently
choices.
making an informative decision.
Mm-hmm.
It could be one or the other, but it's at least given the full view and perspective and the effects. And we know, it was interesting when you brought it up in the pre-discussion, that the after effects of abortions are both physical and psychological, and the physical ones doing with hormones and everything else that change the body, and then you have effects that show up 20, 30 years later. So it's a lifetime thing. But yet again, getting the abortion is sometimes a proper way of dealing with the issue if it's not going to be good for the kid.
Well, I'd
So
like to say,
taking each one.
Kirk can speak about this too, but I know that the approach, if you will, that we use at Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center is certainly, we go through, we call it options counseling, where we inform a gal based upon her questions and her curiosity, and we're asking her if we can take the next step and relay the next set of information to her or whatever. And in every case, a woman does not decide to go through the pregnancy. And if in our presence we witness her, and she sometimes may do it with a little hardness of her heart, because she may feel about us at this point, oh, these people, they only want me to keep the baby, and that love on me thing, that's going to kind of go out the window when I say, but I thank you and for all of this informed choices stuff, but abortion is my only choice. Bottom line, we see our work, and indeed we are ministries, and at Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center, we certainly see our bottom line is we want to love on her, and that sanctity of life thing, even if she is making a choice that would not be our first choice for her, we want her to leave our clinic well loved, with a feeling that what if she has a next unplanned pregnancy? If she leaves after our counseling with her with the feeling that these people, they lost total respect for me when I said, oh, but I'm sorry, I've got to have this abortion. It's my way out. We don't want anyone leaving our clinic like that. We want to spell all of our options as clearly as we can. We want to make her feel so certainly this is how we will walk along the journey. But we can't do all of the journey with her or for her. And even if she chooses abortion, we want her to feel respected and loved by us, so that if she's hurting days later, years later, after that abortion, we are still the safe place that she can come to.
Lori, since the show is wrapping up, I will take that as your final answer. But before that, I'll let you actually tell our listeners or audience about where to look. Where's your clinic?
Oh,
and
wonderful.
how to find you, please.
Okay. We are local. We are Foothills Pregnancy Resource Center, located at 924 Buena Vista, upstairs, Suite 202, in the city of Duarte. Okay. And our
Do you have a web page?
Our web is Foothills PRC, www.foothillsprc.org. Our phone is 626-358-2122. Drop by anytime.
Thank you. Kirk,
Yep.
final thoughts
Yeah,
and
well,
then information.
yeah, I wish we had more time. We could
Yes.
really go into that last question
hours.
you posed there. But we're here to help, and I say that our receptionists and nurses get flowers all the time because of what we've done for the women and the men and stuff that come into our clinic. And I know this discussion hasn't been necessarily about abortion, but that's the other side to the discussion. And I would venture to say that I could probably go to most of the abortion clinics around us. I don't know that they probably get very many flowers in the mail and delivered because it's just a tough thing that they do. And the women that come into our clinic, most often I hear is that no woman wants to have an abortion. It may be in her mind at the moment necessary. It may be what she thinks is the right thing to do. But the reality is down deep, she doesn't really want to do it. And so that's where we are. I mean, so our job is really not to coerce them. They want to have the baby. That's the natural thing to do. And we just have to help them to do it.
I like the choice of words, right?
Safe
for the end.
places.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you could tell that.
Yeah, I'm with Alternate Avenues. We're in Montclair and then 9675 Monte Vista, just south of the 10 freeway. And our website is alternateavenues.net. And same thing, we're there 40 hours a week and RNs and a doc that's willing to help.
Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed the show and that you were learned as much as I did, and I did a lot. I want to thank you both
Thank you,
for
Nick.
joining me
Thank
today,
Thank you.
and I'll see you somewhere out there.